Hello and good evening. Donald Trump hails an historic agreement with Iran. The US president tells world leaders he hopes it'll be the beginning of a larger peace across the Middle East.
If I don't like it, if they don't behave, we'll go right back to dropping bombs right smack in the middle of their head.
But critics say the agreement leaves Iran stronger and the regime emboldened with sanctions lifted and a $300 billion reconstruction fund. In the next 60 minutes, we'll hear from a former White House staffer and a member of the Iranian opposition. What has been won and lost by going to war. Also ahead, Sir Keir Starmer tells Sky News that he wants Andy Burnham to have a big job in government, but just not his. And Donald Trump's Washington makeover, how pools of reflection have become pools of algae. Hello, good evening, and thank you for being with us. Donald Trump has held what he's calling an historic agreement with Iran. Now, this isn't a final deal. There'll be 60 days of talks to go through some of the most difficult of issues. And speaking at the G7 in France, the president said, "We go back to bombing if they can't get it done." But here's what is in the Memorandum of Understanding as we know it at this stage. There'll be an immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts. That includes in Lebanon. The Strait of Hormuz will reopen and remain toll-free for 60 days. The United States would also lift its naval blockade. Iran will agree never to have a nuclear weapon. A schedule will be agreed to lift all sanctions. And the United States will agree with regional partners to develop a $300 billion reconstruction fund for Iran. Now, that leaves some big open questions. After 60 days, does Iran get to impose tolls on the Strait of Hormuz? How exactly will Iran's enriched nuclear material be removed? There's no mention that we can see of stopping Iran from having ballistic missiles either. Now, who will pay for this $300 billion reconstruction fund? And if tariffs are lifted, isn't that a victory for the regime, which will use the money to rebuild its military and the likes of groups like Hezbollah that it supports? Now, most of all, has America fought a war that is ending in a strategic victory for Iran? Over the next hour, we're going to try and answer some of those questions. In a moment, we're going to go live to Washington, but first, Alistair Bunkle reports from the G7 summit in France.
There is an unofficial pecking order to these things, and the US president knows his place in it.
I'm the boss. How are you?
Donald Trump has been pretty upbeat all week.
Would you like to stay for the meeting?
Yes.
It's okay with me.
It's because of his agreement with Iran. No wonder the European leaders here were relieved that he'd got it over the line before arriving.
We welcome the excellent agreement concluded between the United States of America and Iran, obtained by President Trump. And this is an agreement we support because it's one that puts an end to a situation of huge instability with major impacts on our economies.
Summits like this are highly choreographed, so we as journalists spend a lot of the time just kind of on the edge of things, trying to work out how it's all going, looking for those little snippets of agreement or disagreement. But it is the very last event of this summit, which is totally unscripted. In a few minutes' time, a Donald Trump press conference.
Thank you.
Unsurprisingly, Trump wanted to talk about Iran. It was rambling, short on detail, but full of praise for himself.
If they raised the white flag of surrender, and if they said, "Praise be to Allah, Donald Trump is the greatest president ever."
Trump brushed aside what remains of Iran's ballistic missile program, despite having previously vowed to destroy it. And he waved away questions about the US lifting sanctions on the Iranian regime.
We knocked out probably 85% of their missiles. The rest of them are underground. They can't even get them out.
He dismissively mocked a question about the US strike on a primary school in southern Iran, which killed 152 people on the first day of the war.
Mistakes are made. The war is nasty.
Trump criticized Israel again.
When two drones are shot into the desert and drop harmlessly, you don't have to knock down buildings in Beirut. They could behave better.
On Ukraine, The other big war discussed at this summit, but one which Trump has so far failed to resolve, he said little.
I spoke with President Putin. I spoke with President Zelensky, and he was there. And President Putin I spoke over the phone with. And something's going to happen. They're losing a lot of people, a lot of soldiers. They're losing soldiers. Both are losing a lot. Russia's losing more because they're the offensive ones.
As he was leaving, I asked him whether he would restart negotiations with Russia.
Mr. President, are you going to re-engage on Ukraine? With the Europeans?
That is what the Europeans want to hear. They will hope that the 2 days in Evian have finally brought the US president back on side. Alistair Bunkle at the G7 summit in France.
President Trump remains in France. He has just arrived at the Palace of Versailles, where he's going to be having dinner with President Emmanuel Macron and the First Lady of France, Brigitte Macron, before the president moves on to his next engagement. You can see there the beast arriving, doors opening, handshakes between the two presidents. Well, let's go to Washington and bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. David, great to have you with us. So look, we've heard now from Trump and we've seen what's been published. How does that memorandum of understanding that's been published compare with what we heard from President Trump?
Oh, well, at long last, we have the 14 points of the Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran, against which to measure what President Trump had to say during that press conference. He claimed that this deal would end the war that has been going on for more than 100 days, but that is not entirely clear from the document. It commits Iran and the United States to ending military operations, including in Lebanon. But Israel has made it clear it has no intention of ending its operation there, so it could unravel over the very first point. He claimed that it reopens the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely. Again, not quite. It commits the United States to lifting its naval blockade, but only commits Iran to reopening the strait toll-free for 60 days while further negotiations take place. And he also claimed that this deal at least that's what he's calling it, would prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Again, that's not stated in the document. It simply commits them to having further discussions about that also for the next 2 months. So they've really just kicked the issue into the long grass. Look, there is absolutely no doubt that America's had some success militarily against Iran and against its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. But this is far from the historic, groundbreaking deal that President Trump would have us believe it is.
And David, Trump, during that news conference, talked about his fear about economic catastrophe. He compared himself to President Hoover, said he didn't want to be President Hoover. Has he done this deal, do we think, for domestic reasons?
Yeah, well, he said he didn't want to be Hoover because he, of course, was the president who oversaw the Great Depression in the United States, and that, I suppose, does suggest he was concerned about the impact the war was having on the cost of living here in the United States. Remember, it is midterm election year. But if he's hoping to turn around the US economy, important to stress that this deal is also going to be fairly lucrative for the Iranian economy, because the United States and its Gulf allies are going to develop this $300 billion reconstruction fund. Now, the Americans don't need to contribute one single dollar to that, but the fact that they are facilitating it, they are effectively partnering with the regime they were describing as evil and needing to be removed not very long ago. Today, President Trump was describing that same regime as guys I like and smart leaders. And of course, in terms of ballistic missiles, when pressed on whether or not he would allow Iran to have them, he said other nations have them. When pressed on Iran wanting nuclear energy for civilian purposes, he said other nations have it. It's very hard not to read that other than a capitulation by the United States because he was so desperate to get out of this war.
David Blevins for now in DC, thank you for that. Well, earlier I got the thoughts of John Feiner, who helps direct foreign policy during the Biden administration and now co-hosts a podcast on foreign affairs called The Long Game. I began by asking him what he makes of this deal as we see it.
I have to start by saying I'm glad the war is over. It was strategically a failure for the United States and very damaging. And every day that went on, there was more harm being done to the world economy and to America's strategic interests. But when you look at the actual terms of the deal, if you wage a war that you shouldn't have waged, often you end up with a result that you don't like and that's not good for you. And that's what's happened to the United States here. Iran is going to end up stronger coming out of this conflict than they were going in. The United States has played its biggest cards against Iran. It's gone to war against Iran. It's leveled serious oil sanctions against Iran. And it's giving up both of those cards in exchange for Iran not making very many meaningful concessions here. So this outcome is not going to make many people in the United States very happy. And Iran has given up nothing on its nuclear program so far.
Is that your assessment of it? Because as the president would have it, and as we've heard, Iran, the top line of all of this is that Iran will never be able to get a nuclear weapon.
So Iran's public position for almost 20 years has been that it has no desire for a nuclear weapon. Iran wrote that into the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal that the world reached with Iran in 2015 and that President Trump pulled out of in 2018. And now they've restated that for President Trump for an agreement that he's signed. So I'm not sure that makes a meaningful difference at this point. They have said that before. They've said it again. But the reality is, other than that, they've made no concessions. They haven't given up their nuclear material. They haven't agreed to cap their levels of enrichment. They've just agreed to something they've already said many times before.
It's interesting, that answer, John, because you obviously were Deputy National Security Advisor in the Biden administration. Was it the administration's belief that Iran actually were trying to get to a nuclear weapon at some point?
The position of the U.S. intelligence community is that at least since the early 2000s, Iran has not been seeking a nuclear weapon.
Right.
By the way, that's the position of the Israeli intelligence community as well, and the position of most European intelligence services. So our view in the United States government was that since then, Iran has not been seeking a nuclear weapon. I think they have been seeking a capability that would give them the option, should they make a different decision, to try to pursue a weapon, which is why diplomatically, the most important thing was to reduce their nuclear capabilities, their amount of enriched material, the advanced centrifuges, how much material they were producing, and at what level, so that they did not have the option to produce a weapon if they changed their minds.
Now, we posed a few questions earlier. I wonder if you can answer some of these questions as shortly as you can, John, because there's some more stuff I want to get through. But, after 60 days, does Iran get to start charging tolls on the Strait of Hormuz as it's written in this MOU as we see it?
I think you're likely to see Iran continue to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz, to cut deals with countries, with companies, to monetize its new ability to shut down the strait anytime it wants, basically indicating to countries, if you want to continue to have commerce to transit the strait, you're going to have to pay for it. Whether that's strictly speaking a toll or some other mechanism, financial arrangement, that'll be for those countries to work out. But Iran is going to seek financial benefit in the strait. And the one thing that I think is really important here is 60 days of negotiations is not nearly enough time to reach an agreement on Iran's nuclear deal. So I don't think anybody should expect that 60 days from now we'll be gathering again to celebrate some new agreement. It's going to take much longer than that if it ever happens.
I mean, it took you years, your administration years, to negotiate the JCPOA. Trump thinks he can do it in 60, maybe 90 days. Talk to us about the nuclear material as well. Are we clear how that will be removed? Trump again mentioned this idea about the Americans and the Chinese being the only ones that could go in there and get it, but then talked about it being deep under granite. What's your sense from what we've heard as to what's going to happen to that stuff?
So he both says that we're going to go in and get it, and then alternatively sometimes says we don't need to go get it. It's not that dangerous. This is about 1,000 pounds of uranium that's been enriched to 60%. That is a small step, a half step, technically, from 90% enriched uranium, which is what is considered weapons grade. We don't want Iran to reach 90%, so the best way to avoid that would be to take that material out of Iran. It does not look like Iran's going to agree to send that material out. Another possibility would be to get Iran to dilute that material so the percentage is well below 60%. That's what they're going to discuss, but Iran has not agreed to anything at this point. And I think it does not look like the United States has a very credible option to go back to war if Iran never agrees to remove that material. So I think this next period of negotiation is going to be very challenging.
Okay. How does the memorandum of understanding that's been published compare with what Donald Trump said during that news conference?
I mean, so President Trump said a lot of things during that news conference. I would focus on what is actually in the document. And what's in the document is no nuclear concessions as we head into these talks. Iran gets a bunch of advanced payment through unfreezing of assets, through the creation of this investment fund for its reconstruction. And then the two sides will talk about Iran's nuclear program and see if they can reach an understanding. And I think the odds of that are pretty low at this point.
I mean, Trump also talked about economic catastrophe. He kept talking about President Hoover as well and the Great Depression. Does that sort of reveal that he's concerned about his domestic agenda, domestic problems that could come if the war were continuing, rather than anything else?
I think that's entirely what is motivating the president to do a deal at this point. And it's an odd argument. It's a very odd argument to make, because he's saying if the war continued, well, there'd be this economic disaster. Well, you chose to start this war. It didn't accomplish all that much. The Iranian regime is still in place. Iran still has a nuclear program. It still has a military capable of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. And now you're saying, well, I have to stop it or else the global economy is going to crash. So it's a very odd argument, both for starting the war, given how little was accomplished, and now for stopping it, given that he created the situation that is threatening the global economy.
John Finer speaking to us. The Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has said that the UK will support efforts to get traffic moving again through the Straits, which, until the beginning of the war, was one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. Ms Cooper was speaking to our political correspondent Ali Fortescue in the Egyptian capital, Cairo.
We're working to support the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz because that is what will make the biggest difference to the cost of living for us back at home, but also for the global economy. We've got to get international shipping moving again. So that's why the UK has been working with France on an international maritime mission to help with demining, to help with reassurance and support for shipping. We already have HMS Dragon in the region, and we're sending additional mine-sweeping capabilities so that we're ready to provide that support and get things moving again.
I can say that Ali joins us now live. Great to have you with us, Ali, and good evening to you. So we've heard a bit there of what the UK government wants to do now, that it seems as if the US and Iran have got a deal. What else did the Foreign Secretary have to say?
Well, look, it's been a really interesting trip. I should say it's the first time that Yvette Cooper, in the role as Foreign Secretary, has been to Egypt, and she sees this as a key ally in the region, somewhere uniquely placed when it comes to Iran, Gaza, migration. But obviously it is Iran and the Strait of Hormuz that has dominated this trip. And you heard that clip there. I mean, I think it's really interesting. The UK obviously is trying to find a role. We've heard some sort of fairly subtle swipes from Donald Trump directed at the UK. I think there are questions too, of course, about our defence spending that haven't necessarily helped our position on the world stage. But I think where the Foreign Secretary thinks we really can have a role is when it comes to clearing the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, you know, we're not there yet. We're waiting to see what happens with this deal. The expectation is that in the first instance, it would be Iran that would be clearing the Strait of Hormuz. But obviously, there would have to be some kind of international check, and the UK wants to play a key role there. In fact, a ship, RFA Lime Bay, is in the region already, I'm told, and ready to go should it be needed to help clear the strait. So that, I think, is where the UK sees itself. I also want to mention migration, because that is something that the Foreign Secretary has been really focusing on today on this trip. She's been meeting Sudanese migrants here in Egypt. This, of course, is a key transit point. Many people moving through Africa towards the UK. It's got a border with Libya, Sudan, Gaza, of course, travel through Egypt. Let's have a listen to what she had to say a bit earlier about migration.
Migration is an international issue. So many countries are affected by different aspects of it. For us in the UK, we have the serious problem of small boats, dangerous and illegal small boats crossing the channel. But other countries face different kinds of challenges, and often those are linked together. Here in Egypt, they've been providing a huge amount of support for Sudanese refugees. Other countries face different kinds of challenges. But if we want to prevent criminal smuggler gangs from exploiting these problems and ending up with making people make dangerous and illegal journeys, we have to work together. Countries have to work together to make sure that there is prevention, support, and also proper law enforcement as well.
Right now in Egypt, there are 10 million displaced people. 1.5 million Sudanese people have come here since the most recent war started. There is a domestic debate here going on about whether the country can handle those numbers. Of course, you know, there's a domestic debate in the UK about small boat crossings. A small number of those crossings come from Egypt, but many more come through Egypt. 700 plus, I should say, on Monday alone crossing the Channel in small boats. And the Foreign Secretary, I mean, you'd be mistaken for thinking that she was still the Home Secretary, because she thinks that this is now should be part of the Foreign Secretary's brief. She has just pledged money upstream, £9 million, to go to help Egypt to get people opportunities, jobs, medical care here, so that they don't go on and try to make it to the UK. Obviously, you know, people back home will judge them on success and those numbers. So those are the kind of key things she wanted to talk about. Iran, migration. We're interviewing her tomorrow. There's obviously a certain amount of domestic politics back in the UK as well, which we will ask her about too.
Just a bit. Ali Fortescue for now in Cairo. Thank you. Well, you're watching The World, and still to come. The Prime Minister digs in, but was the G7 Keir Starmer's last foray on the world stage as leader? He's been speaking to our political editor, Beth Ripley.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News. People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Returning to the G7 summit and the question of whether this was the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's last summit on the world stage. He insists he's going to fight to stay in number 10 as things once again come to a head over his embattled leadership. He was speaking to our political editor, Beth Rigby.
The final day of the G7 summit in France, and for this Prime Minister, it could be his last. Keir Starmer's spent the week here with fellow leaders talking about Ukraine, Iran and big tech.
I'm the boss.
But it won't be global politics that determines his fate, but the political battle back home. On Thursday, voters in the Makerfield constituency will decide whether to make Andy Burnham their MP and open the door to him trying to unseat this PM. But Starmer wants his rival on side. Would you bring Burnham back into your cabinet?
Oh, Andy's a great asset, and yes, I want him to have a big role in government.
Are you going to call him at the weekend and invite him back into your cabinet?
Well, I'm sure I'll talk to Andy after the weekend. Of course I will. I've spoken to him many times in recent weeks. He's a huge asset. He's been a fantastic mayor in Manchester, and if he comes back into Parliament, I hope he wins in the by-election, he'll be a fantastic asset for our party and for the country.
The PM stepping up his survival strategy, but ready to fight. A straight yes or no, please, then. Are there any circumstances in which you would step aside?
Well, I don't think there should be a leadership election. I think that the last government proved that parties that spend their whole time in leadership elections don't go on to win the next general election. I would also say this, that Andy Burnham is in this by-election. I want him to win. Our activists, our members are up there campaigning for him. That is a good thing. If he does win, we've immediately got a Manchester mayoralty to fight. And that starts straight away. It's very important to us that we win that.
So just yes or no, no circumstances.
I'm not going to walk away. I'm going to fight.
No circumstances you would step aside.
I'm not walking away. I'm going to fight.
But a reflective Prime Minister acknowledging his predicament. Prime Minister, you're going to fight on, that's very clear. Do you intend to lead your party into the next general election?
That's what I want to do, and I've been very clear about that. Okay. Do I recognise that that means we've got to turn things around? Yes, I do, but that's what I want to do.
That's a different answer to the one you gave me in September 2025 when I asked you. You said, I will lead Labour into the next election. In November 2025 at the G20, I asked you that question. I had an emphatic yes. What's changed?
Well, that's what I want to do, Beth, and I've been very clear about that throughout. But, of course, when you lose elections as badly as we did in May, it hurts, and it should hurt. It matters, and that has got to be turned around. The question is, do we pull together and turn that around as a party and as a government, which is what I think we should do, or do we descend into a leadership race which will bring chaos?
Keir Starmer's been fighting for survival for months, with questions about whether he'll serve a full term as Prime Minister beginning nearly a year ago. And now he finds himself in the end game as his rivals circle and challengers warn openly of a contest about to come. Despite it all, he told me he's neither angry nor bitter, rather that he wants to continue to serve. But to quote one cabinet minister, this isn't about Andy Burnham coming for Starmer's job. It's about the Prime Minister having lost it. That if it wasn't for Burnham, it would be someone else. Keir Starmer, perhaps in his private moments, accepts it's probably too late to turn it all around. But he's not done yet. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Evian.
Well, here is the list of candidates standing in the Makerfield by-election, both the names of the candidates and the parties they are standing for. You're watching The World with me, Kamali Melbourne. Coming up next, the son of Iran's last Shah warns against any deal with its Islamic rulers. We're going to get his perspective after this short break.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Well, thanks for staying with us. Now, a few hours after Donald Trump gave that news conference and we finally got the printout of the 14 points of this memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran, we've now heard from Iran's top negotiator, the former Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammad Khalibaf, who's had a few things to say about the Iranian understanding of this deal, specifically about the Strait of Hormuz. Mr. Khalibaf has had to say that the Strait of Hormuz, he says, will not return to pre-war conditions. He says that doesn't mean acting against international law or maritime navigation. His comments are being quoted by the Iranian state media. Mr. Khalibaf has also said that Iran will naturally, he says, charge for services in the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, great fear that there'll be tolls for shipping to pass through the Strait of Hormuz after this war is finally over. He's also said that as that memorandum of understanding has that $300 billion fund set out for Iran, he says that's been allocated and will be invested in Iran, part of which he says will be spent on reconstruction. That is Mohammad Khalibaf, Speaker of the Parliament, the top negotiator of Iran, saying that the Strait of Hormuz won't go back to how it was before, but also saying that international law will be respected. He said they will charge for services in the Strait of Hormuz and that the money expected to go to Iran, some $300 billion, not clear where that money's coming from, he says has been allocated to be spent on reconstruction. If Mr. Khalibaf has anything else to say about that memorandum of understanding, of course, we'll bring it to you as soon as we get it. Now, the agreements signed between the US and Iran commits them to an immediate cessation of violence on all fronts. That, of course, includes Lebanon. Iran has already said that it would regard strikes on Hezbollah as a breach of the ceasefire, and it expects Donald Trump to keep Israel in line. Here's our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clark.
If there is a breach of the ceasefire in Lebanon, if Hezbollah starts sending rockets into northern Israel, if the Israelis respond, as they've said they will, by attacking into southern Lebanon again, even more by attacking Beirut, the Iranians could block the Strait of Hormuz within a couple of hours. It would only take a couple of missiles, a couple of drones to fire at any ships passing through. It takes about 8 hours for any ship to pass through the Strait of Hormuz itself. And that could be a very nervy 8 hours if there are any drones being fired. It wouldn't take much to block the Strait of Hormuz again. So we could imagine that the Israelis are actually hostage now to the Strait of Hormuz. If the Israelis, in the view of the Iranians, if they misbehave themselves, the straits may close for a day. Then they might open again. Then they might close again. You can imagine the Strait of Hormuz opening and closing and opening and closing as a pressure point until the Iranians feel that they're getting what they want out of this 60 days of negotiation with the Americans on all of the nuclear issues. In reality, this takes us all back to before the bombing started, before the 28th of February. We're back to that situation, but it's worse. It's worse than it was then because the world has suffered. The Strait of Hormuz is a pressure point, and I cannot believe that the Iranians will not continue to use it. In 1869, Mark Twain famously said that war is God's way of teaching the Americans geography. Well, I suspect that this war will be a continuing lesson in geography for all of us.
Professor Michael Clark reporting there. Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons reports now from Lebanon.
This is the queue for people wanting to get back to southern Lebanon, inching along, hoping to get home. There is a sense of optimism here. This man goes from vehicle to vehicle, handing out sweets. And there is also widespread support for Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed group that has been battling Israel for decades. Israel says Hezbollah is a terrorist organization that threatens its existence. But for many of these people, it's a protector of Lebanon's south.
If they want to remove the resistance, let them try. If they want to remove the people, let them try. The resistance is the people. The resistance is us. They cannot remove the people.
But it is one thing to travel in hope, another to stay cheerful when this is what greets you. Southern Lebanon has been devastated by Israel's assault against Hezbollah's positions. More than 3,500 people have been killed, including 7 since yesterday. The paramedics in this area told us they know there are bodies here, but until now it's been too dangerous to recover them.
This airstrike happened about 15 to 20 days ago. Yesterday we were finally able to reach Tulin and recover the martyrs. We recovered 2 yesterday and there's still one under the rubble, whom we're retrieving now.
Little wonder then that the people who are coming back are now taking nothing for granted.
But now we don't know if we are going to, this negotiation, this ceasefire, we are not too sure that it will still on. We are all afraid of the situation.
Israel's position is clear, saying it has to respond to Hezbollah's rocket and drone attacks on northern Israel, that Israelis are under threat and that it won't pull out of Lebanon anytime soon, whatever anyone might demand.
Regarding Lebanon, we have created a buffer zone, a security zone, and we will remain there as long as necessary. Iran wanted us to withdraw from there, but that did not happen. Do you know why it did not happen, among other reasons? Because I stood very, very firm.
Hezbollah's spokesman, not just defiant, but convinced that his group, with Iran's help, has emerged triumphant and emboldened.
What America and Israel failed to do, uprooting us or breaking us, no forces in the world will be able to do. The people of the South return today under the protection, care and strength of the resistance. God willing, they will return to the last point on the border.
Within sight, a military bulldozer is preparing to clear land held by Israel. Nobody here is giving an inch. Peace still feels elusive. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Of course, someone who has no faith in any deal with Iran's rulers is Reza Pahlavi, the son of Iran's last Shah, who was ousted back in 1979 in the revolution. Now, Mr. Pahlavi has lived in exile for 46 years and has tried to position himself as a unifying figure in Iran's fragmented opposition. With me tonight is Reza Pahlavi's Chief of Staff, Kamran Khan Sarina. Kamran Khan Sarina, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today in what is obviously a momentous moment for your country, and it has been a momentous few months. First, what do you make of what you've seen from this memorandum of understanding?
Oh, well, I think a lot is to be borne out in the coming days and weeks. I think there are a lot of hopes placed in the Islamic Republic by this memorandum of understanding. Of course, it's just appeared for further negotiations. I don't anticipate it to go very far, and I think that that's borne out by the track record of the past 47 years. You have a regime that is not guided by Iran's national interests. It's not looking to defend the Iranian national interests, but rather seeking to pursue an acute ideological aim, which is radical Islam, which is to export the revolution that took over Iran in 1979 to the rest of the world, here to the UK, across Europe, and even to the United States. And so I think to expect that Mr. Ghalibaf, who claims very publicly that he's proud of having thrown students off of rooftops during the student protests in Iran, is somebody who can be trusted to guarantee the West's security interests, is really quite foolish. And I think that we'll see in the coming days and weeks that this will not unfold well.
Well, perhaps we cannot trust the Iranian regime, but can you really trust Donald Trump? On the 28th of February, he told the Iranian people to rise up. He talked of regime change. He's talked of a lot of things that, as we heard from him a few hours ago and in this memorandum of understanding, are just simply not there. Were you wrong to believe that President Trump had your and the Iranian people's interests at heart?
I think it's important to consider what President Trump and the Americans and the Israelis did in their military campaign against the regime. So on January 8th and 9th, when the Iranian people in their millions went to the streets at the call of Prince Reza Pahlavi, 40,000 people were slaughtered fighting for freedom. They were not armed. They were not shooting anyone. They were peacefully protesting. They were silently protesting. They were with their mobile phones holding up light, hoping the world would see them. And 40,000 of them were slaughtered. Now, nobody in the world did anything. The Europeans, who claim from morning till night that they care about human rights and human dignity and the rights of women, did nothing for the Iranian women who were raped in hospitals, for the Iranian children who were shot in their hospital beds. They did nothing. So President Trump stepped in and he eliminated Ali Khamenei, who had been Iran's dictator for 30 years. He and the Israelis took out many of the criminal elements leading the country, and so that was certainly welcomed by the Iranian people. They viewed it as a humanitarian intervention to shoot back at those who had been shooting at them for 47 years. Now, that military campaign weakened the regime significantly, and so I think it's a wasted opportunity for the United States and for the world not to be taking advantage of that. So we're disappointed, of course, that they haven't continued. We're disappointed as Iranians because that will not serve the cause of democracy and freedom in our country, but also, frankly, it won't serve the interests of the United States or the Western world.
Mr. Cantarino, have they really been weakened, though? We've lost sort of a theocratic regime, been replaced with, by all accounts, a military junta. The IRGC is stronger. They've now learned they don't really need a nuclear weapon because they can close the Strait of Hormuz. Many would see the Iranian regime as coming out of this war in a stronger position.
It certainly looks like that, but when you see the things that they're doing internally, you'll see that they're quite fearful of their hold on power. The fact that they just shut off the internet for nearly 100 days, and the longest shut off of the internet anywhere in the world. I mean, these are really, they're trying to compete with North Korea and the limitations on information that they're putting, and that's because they're fearful of the population. So whatever happens internationally, whether there is a deal or there is not a deal, the regime is unstable because it's domestically unpopular. So the conditions that brought people to the streets on January 8th and 9th are only getting worse. And they will not settle for anything less than this regime going, because 40,000 people were slaughtered. That's someone's neighbor, someone's son, someone's daughter. Everyone in Iran knows someone who was murdered by this regime, and they won't accept this regime staying in power.
Yeah, and we've reported on much of that. You and Mr. Pahlavi have been in the UK for a couple of days now. You met with Emily Thornberry, who is a senior Labour politician, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. What did she say to you? What support did she offer?
Well, that was an off-the-record meeting with the Foreign Affairs Commission, so with due respect to the Commission, I don't want to go into too many details, but what we've heard consistently from MPs across parties, Labour, Reform, Conservative, is that they support the Iranian people and that, frankly, many are shocked by the government's lack of willingness to list the IRGC. We've been told in consecutive meetings, year after year, this was something that the government was going to pursue. We were told that Keir Starmer's government was going to pursue this. They were going to follow the lead of the United States, now of Europe. But the UK has been lacking on this, and the UK is facing terrorist threats from this regime right here in London, across the country. There are Iranian journalists who we work with who have had their lives threatened, Jewish community groups, everyday UK citizens, Iranian activists who are targeted by this regime. So it's quite shocking that the Starmer government isn't taking action, and it's really shameful because we hear so much talk of human rights and human dignity. It appears when it comes to the Iranian people, they don't care about their human rights or their human dignity. So we hear lots of support from MPs, and we hope that a future government will do much more to support the people of Iran.
But saying things is one thing. Doing something is quite different. Donald Trump said all the right things, and he hasn't done the thing that he wanted.
Well,
let me just put the question to you as well. And in the early days of the war, when it was clear that, Khamenei had been killed, and as Donald Trump said, many of the senior leadership had been wiped out, he didn't then call for Mr. Pahlavi to step forward. He actually described him as a bit of a lightweight.
Well, that's okay. We don't need President Trump to call on the prince or invite the prince back to his own country. What matters for the leader of any country is the support of that country for that person, or the lack of support. And so when we saw on January 8th and 9th across Iran, in every single one of Iran's 31 provinces, across linguistic, ethnic, religious, all sorts of demographic classes, people chanting for the prince, that's the legitimacy, that's the domestic support that matters. So it is the Iranian people who will determine their future leader, the future form of government, and at that point, it'll be for President Trump and for the world leaders to support the Iranian people's sovereign right to choose.
Many analysts think that there will be another uprising in Iran. Whether or not Mr. Pahlavi will be a part of that remains to be seen. Probably likely that he will be. But won't you still come up against the same issue you had back in January, the same issue you had at the beginning of the war? The besieged, the IRGC, they have the guns.
Yes.
And they have the mentality to kill citizens. Yeah. Where are you going to find your strength?
So several things have to be done. First of which, it's important to, again, recognize that the military campaign was critical in weakening those apparatuses. So to the extent that foreign powers will continue to target the regime's repressive capacity, its ability to shoot innocent people, that's important. Don't view this as a war of the Americans or the Israelis. Think about it from the Iranian perspective. They've been slaughtered for years, and somebody finally started shooting back. So that was a good thing. The second thing is the internet. I mean, again, we talk about Europe and the role that Europe can play. Europe doesn't want to get involved in a military conflict, or the UK doesn't. That's perfectly fine. But we speak every day in Europe about the importance of human rights and access to information. Well, help the people of Iran get access to internet. Send Starlinks into Iran. Help us to push back on the regime's censorship. And third, support the people of Iran in their campaign for freedom. Be ready for when this transition comes. There's a clear plan for transition. And of course, there's the work that Iranians have to be doing. We're reorganizing. We're preparing for this next phase. We know what a criminal, brutal, and evil regime we're facing. And so that requires thinking of new tactics to push back against this regime. So those 2 or 3 things I listed that the world can do to help, if it does, the cost of this change will be lower, it'll be quicker. But even if the world doesn't do those things, even if there is some sort of deal signed somewhere in Switzerland, the people of Iran will not accept this regime. They'll continue the fight. They will fight until they are free. And the 40,000 people who gave their lives for freedom, they didn't do it for a deal. They didn't do it just to have the Strait of Hormuz open. They gave it so that their country can be free. And by the way, when Iran is free, the Strait of Hormuz will be open, and Iran will be once again an actor for peace and stability, which it has not been for 47 years.
Cameron Constantine, thank you very much for being with us, and extend our invitation to the Crown Prince to join us at any moment that he feels fit.
I shall.
Thank you very much. All right, so the US-Iran agreement, is it a breakthrough or a bluff? Well, that's what Yalda Hakim examines in this week's episode of the World Podcast. You can scan the QR codes to listen to it now. Yalda's joined by Ali Vaez, who was involved in negotiating the 2015 nuclear deal, that JCPOA that Trump tore up in 2018. He explains his thinking on where Iran's nuclear capabilities are now.
If you had asked me prior to the 12-day war, how long it would take for Iran to enrich enough fissile material to weapons grade, I would tell you it would take Iran 6 days. If you ask me now, what's the timeline? I tell you it's the exact same thing. Because Iran still has that 60% stockpile. It still has a stockpile of advanced centrifuges. It has scientists. It knows how to do this.
All right, to find that podcast where you find your podcasts on a daily. This is The World with me, Kamali Melbourne, and still to come. The pesky algae that's getting in the way of Trump's $14 billion makeover at the reflecting pool in DC.
A lifeline for millions of people living on both sides of one of the most volatile international borders.
It's dams like these that have become inflection points between the 2 nuclear-armed neighbors, which could potentially lead to water wars in the future. A terror attack has shattered the peace and tranquility of Kashmir. At least 26 people have been killed and as many injured when militants fired upon them. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
The old and young, all weary after being trapped for days, as the worst floods have hit Kerala in a century.
3 days we are on a rooftop. They have no food, nothing.
The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. There have been reported deaths and many injuries, several critical.
Many families will grapple with the unimaginable loss of one of the worst disasters in India's aviation history.
The spiraling violence between 2 nuclear-armed neighbors that harbor decades of hostility just seems to be getting worse by the day.
Garbage dumps like this not only threaten the lives of millions of people, but also pose a deadly consequence on the environment and climate.
It is a source of death, decay, disease, and pollution for hundreds of thousands of people living in its shadows.
There is so much disease because of this garbage. Sometimes it's so difficult to just breathe.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. It's a real kaleidoscope of people from all walks of life.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Thanks for staying with us. More than $14 million has been spent revamping Washington's Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. But as Mark Stone tells us, it's not exactly gone to plan.
Well, this truly has turned into a spectacular nonsense. Are you vacuuming the bottom? Wow, long way to go. Oh, and by the way, who knew that Brits and Americans pronounce the green problem in here just a bit differently?
Algae.
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 Like algae. Algae. It's all the same.
Anyway, what's going on down here? Well, a couple of months ago, President Trump decided this was to be his latest project, cleaning up the iconic reflecting pool down here on the Washington Mall.
It was in terrible shape. It was filthy dirty. It looked gorgeous, beautiful.
It's had a problem with algae, or is it algae, for a very long time. But the problem is embedded in its 1920s design. It's shallow, it's big, in a place where it gets very hot. And also, its filtration system is flawed. But the problem with President Trump is that he thought it could be a quick fix, or at least that's what the people he paid a lot of public money told him. So he drained it, and he applied the swimming pool principle to a body of water this big. He had it painted.
Beautiful color. I picked American flag blue. I couldn't make up my mind.
That was after a sort of swimming pool liner was rolled out across it. There was a photo op, of course, and then it was refilled. For a couple of days, it looked good. This is us filming here just after it opened. But that was just a week ago. Now look.
My tax dollars did not go to good use. But yeah, it looks terrible. I mean, it looks the same. Actually, it looks worse.
Why? It was beautiful before, and now we have to pay these guys, which are just doing their job, to pool skim our reflecting pond? I feel like that was a waste of my money.
I think it's looking good. It's not as green as everyone has been showing, so it looks like they're making some progress. And
it's not American flag blue, though, is it?
Not quite.
Yeah, I was here the other day, and you could see a ton of algae. Now it just looks kind of like murky green.
The president said this would cost
$1.5 million.
Instead, it's cost upward of $14 million and counting for a reflecting pool that is as green now as it was before. A reflection, maybe, of flawed decision-making beyond here.
Mark Stone reporting. That's all from me and the team. The World returns tomorrow with Barbara Sarah from 9 p.m. Stay with Sky News. The Wrap with Anna Botting up next.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter? Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?